The Bucks remain undefeated. They beat the Knicks, and then they take care of the Hawks in a game that went right to the final minute. Arguably the most exciting game we've had so far this season, and it was Giannis again that took over in the fourth quarter. So you guessed it, we're going to be talking Giannis, but Brook mentioned this one keeps doing stuff late in games, and Jrue Holiday had the offensive explosion we've been waiting for. Let's go down. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Weekend Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. See on the show daily, and also find my work over at ESPN. Alongside me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for today's episode that is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. It's Bet Online where the game starts. And we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen or first watch of every day, Monday to Friday for sure, but occasionally on the weekend. But if you wake up Monday and you think that you're 24 hours behind listening to this podcast, there's only one reason for that, because you're not subscribed. You don't have the notifications on. So if you do that, you'll be able to tune into this and give yourself a happy Sunday morning listening to Locked On Bucks. They beat the Knicks, but I think the priority tonight is definitely going to be talking about this game against Atlanta. They win 123-115. They're 5-0, and they started the first year of the Budenholzer era 7-0. I don't know. I asked you this question. I don't know what the franchise record is. I didn't have time to look it up. But either way, I think you got to be pretty satisfied with 5-0, and particularly the way they were able to close this out with Giannis in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and I guess third time. I'm trying to remember the 34-point half that was against Brooklyn. So what was that, 2 games ago or 3 games ago, whatever it was? 30 points in the second half tonight to finish with 34 after a very difficult first quarter for him. Kind of watching, I think he started like 1 for 7, 1 for 8, something like that. And you kind of had to wonder a little bit, like, back to back is just the conditioning out there. He was kind of searching for his rhythm, and I mean, give the Hawks credit, right? I mean, we've been talking for a couple of years now, going back to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think Onyeka Okongwu does about as good a job generally against Giannis one-on-one as pretty much anybody. And between Okongwu and Capella, I mean, they have some big guys that can, at least try to protect the rim. This is not a team that has been good defensively over the past couple of years, or at least not last year. Last year they were really bad, but Okongwu was out for a big portion of last year. So yeah, I mean, I think that first half, Giannis really struggling, 4 points or whatever it was. And I think for me, the big takeaway, I mean, again, Giannis eventually gets his 34-17, 4 assists, somehow ends up 11-22. I think he was 6 for 6 in the fourth quarter. So again, just can't miss clutch Giannis. We saw that turnaround banker in the final minute, which was pretty ballsy to see him take. But you look at the box score, he played 33 minutes. They were minus 10 in his time. And so they were, whatever it was, plus 18 in the 15 minutes that he was on the bench. So let's talk about how they were able to be plus 15. Brook Lopez, I mean, we've been talking about his defense the first couple of weeks of the season, how awesome he's looked. He had some good moments defensively. Certainly Trae Young and DeJounte Murray now put as much pressure on you in pick and rolls as about pretty much any duo can in the league. Both those guys had some real moments. Trae 42 did take 32 shots, and I think that was one of the big takeaways. We talk about the Bucks and their philosophy. I thought that was going to be tested tonight, just given how good the Hawks are in the pick and roll game. This was the second best offense in the league last year. But I think they kind of decided, look, like we're gonna make those guys kind of beat us. They took 51 shots. They scored 63 points. That's pretty good. But they weren't out of this world in terms of overall offensive rating, and 13 to 29 threes. So they didn't take tons and tons of threes. And kind of, again, sort of a similar story from what we've seen before. The Bucks won the shot charts. Very few shots at the rim, relatively few shots from deep, tons of mid-range stuff. And they have a couple guys that are very good. Trae in that floater range, DeJounte in that mid-range. But ultimately, Brook Lopez was awesome offensively tonight as well. 21 points on 12 shots, 5 of 8 threes. He could not miss in that first half. And then Jrue Holiday, this was a big sigh of relief game for me on the Jrue Holiday front, because especially offensively, I mean, the second game he looked pretty good, but he's been pretty bad offensively. The defense has had, again, some, less than his stellar best moments at times defensively as well. Some of those also defensive moments, I'd say in the first half, he kind of, let's just say he was not working as hard as Javon Carter and George Hill were against Trey in the first couple quarters. But he was I just had an awesome night offensively, was just an assassin for mid-range, got some big buckets in that fourth quarter, 34 points on 13 out of 22 shooting, 7 free throw attempts. We love to see that from Jrue. 12 assists, 4 steals, 3 turnovers, plus 12 in 37 minutes. And, again, we talk about when Jrue is engaged defensively, he comes up with a huge steal that pretty much sealed it when the Bucks were up. I think they were up 4 at the time, when he just pretty much took the ball away from Trey at midcourt, throws it over his head to Giannis for the exclamation point. So, or I think they were up 6. I think they were already up 6 at the time. But anyway, so yeah, just fun to see a night where the offense was clicking, even when Giannis was not looking so great. They got big support from Jrue Holiday, who you always know you need, and Brook Lopez, who, again, kind of fades in and out of games, but that was the big 3 tonight. And against an Atlanta team that has been very good to start this year. They started the year 4-1. Both teams on a back-to-back. Bucks were ahead for the vast majority of this game, had a double-digit lead at times in the second half. And so definitely got a bit hairier than maybe you would have liked it to. But big players making big plays for the Bucks. And ultimately, Trey might have ran out of gas a little bit at the end. He missed a bunch of shots late and had the turnover. So, yeah, have to feel good about going to 5-0. And, Friday night as well, obviously took care of business against the Knicks. Giannis doing Giannis stuff, and the defense really driving that one. But, yeah, as we were saying, start of the season, goal was just to bank wins while you start to hopefully get a good rhythm on both ends. And, tonight it was the offense that started to look a lot sharper. But defensively, they did what needed to be done late. And again, I think from a shot chart perspective, they pitched a pretty good game against a really talented offensive team.
And then the other difference is made up at the free throw line, 29 attempts to 15. Now, we understand, obviously, Giannis left a few there, but that's how they were also able to have the edge, even though Atlanta, kind of a rare occasion in a Bucks game where the opposition outscores the Bucks in the paint. They did that tonight. They're relatively efficient, but as you pointed to, if you're playing against Trae Young, there's going to be a lot of that sort of deep paint shots, floater range, that he's going to get those up and can be pretty effective. I would have bet that a Jrue Holiday game was coming up soon, but this one was certainly timely. And that reminds me of our friends at Bet Online, which we know is the number one source for betting for football and also the NBA as that continues to roll through. So find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. I mentioned this last week. You can still get the odds for the first player in the NBA to score 50 points. I don't believe anyone's done it yet, but you can do it. If you think Giannis is going to do it, he's been threatening. And hey, a couple of games against Detroit, and no disrespect, but I think there's a chance we could have a 50-burger coming up this week. So as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. So Jrue Holiday, 2 for 8 in the first quarter as well. So
let me say this. There was definitely a moment in the first quarter after like another Jrue miss where I literally thought to myself, like, man, just sucked early. It was just like, man, we talked about it last year too, right? Remember last year early in the season, he was missing layups all over the place. And we were like,
he was,
is some of this playoff hangover when he was missing all these shots during the title run? Like what's going on here? And obviously he found his rhythm last season. So hopefully that's what we're seeing here. But yeah, first quarter had some moments too before he really kind of got his rhythm going.
Well, he was 40%, and this is the thing that's crazy. He ended up being 40% from 3 last year, which even though I've looked at it and I've seen it, it's still tough for me to wrap my head around the fact that he shot 40% from 3. I think it's because he does actually take a high degree of difficulty attempts, because they're always the step backs, they're off the dribble, and he just has been so effective at it. And obviously he was in the back end of the season, but because I had some League Pass stuff going on with this game. So I was about 15 minutes behind tip, so I had to catch up on League Pass. So I actually watched the first half with the Atlanta broadcast while I was trying to figure out how to catch up. And anyway, it's the League Pass is giving me some grief at the moment. But the Atlanta announcers, who I think are pretty good, by the way, they were like, gee, Jrue Holiday is not shy tonight. And then at one point, the announcer was like, maybe this is a playoff carryover for Jrue Holiday. He shot terribly in the postseason, and he doesn't seem that he could make anything. And then once he did, obviously after that point, he was 11 for 16, I think, in the second half or something along those lines. I mean, it was just insane. And you know that he's feeling himself when he has that almost over the backboard, touches the rafters mid-range jump shot that
from like
hits.
Slightly behind the backboard, like
it's
right
crazy.
on the baseline, that gotta kind of angle it over the top of the backboard. Yeah,
it doesn't even make sense. And even Marcus Johnson on the broadcast was like, yeah, we've seen it so many times that he's going to hit it. It's kind of his trademark at this point. So out of all the games the Bucks have played, this was the one where they needed the offense to come through. But defensively, you pointed to some of the stuff. So Atlanta are different at this point. And when you mention the plus minus, it's weird that Giannis was minus 10, but Trae Young was also minus 13. Like the two stars, it's like, how does that even make sense on the box score? But Javon Carter spent a fair bit of time on Trae Young. I think he was pretty frustrated, and I think Marcus mentioned that Trae Young may have a career as a thespian once he's done with his basketball days. He likes to go the floor, but what we saw for the last few possessions, it was like, okay, George Hill, you're coming in. Wes Matthews, you're coming in. And whether or not people like it or not, we saw Bud lean on the vets, the trusty vets that he knows that aren't going to foul, because Javon gave up a couple of fouls in a row. Whether or not they were good calls or not, he did. And Bud lent on his vets. And ultimately, Wes Matthews again came up with some pretty critical moments in the last minute.
Yeah, I mean, Trae is one of the, elite foul grifters in the league, and a guy that, anytime he feels any contact, he's going to ground, and the officials are generally pretty charitable with him, babying him pretty heavily. But the fact that, 23 seconds left, Bucks up 3, I believe. We get that foul call where DeAndre Hunter's called for basically pushing Wes Matthews into Trae, and they all kind of went toppling over. And of course, when that happens, I'm immediately thinking like, oh my God, this isn't, before the inbound foul. So it's going to be a free throw and the ball. And it's like, oh my God, we're just giving away points on this. So, kudos to the officials for being willing to call it. I didn't at first, like with all the noise happening, at first I was like, wait, did Trae get called for pulling like Wes down into him or something like that? But then, I think you can see on the replay, like, Wes kind of engages with DeAndre Hunter and then gets pushed and falls backwards. So, I mean, it seemed like a good call. And Atlanta was out of timeouts at that point. It was that why I can't recall. Is that why they did not challenge it? And I forget that I should know this. But I was trying to figure out like why they didn't challenge the call. And my assumption was it just because they didn't have a timeout that they couldn't challenge the call. But again, if you want to Google that in the background, Kane, I believe you need to have a timeout in order to challenge. But but anyway, it was huge play obviously at that point. And we got to look. I should again, I'm like saying stuff that we probably should have like researched before we come on air. Right, we're doing this right after the game. Jrue goes to the foul line, misses the second, and what happens? What is the Bucks' offensive rebound rate on second missed free throws? It's insane. We know with Giannis, it's crazy how often the ball ends up in Giannis's hands on missed second free throws. And Wes Matthews, he makes the hustle play, draws the foul, perhaps some acting skills, falling backwards to draw that offensive foul, and then a blind backhanded save to Jrue to retain possession after the missed free throw. Jrue evading the foul, passes it to Giannis, which again, Giannis at that point was 9 out of 17 from the foul line. Giannis hanging onto the ball to get fouled after Jrue gave it up to him. Maybe not really the decision that the coaches would have drawn up, right? Maybe they just say like, hey, Jrue, just let them foul you so you can go back to the line. There's under 24 seconds left. We'd rather have you shooting those free throws. But credit to Giannis. He was like, "F it, I'm shooting these free throws. I'm making them." And it's funny, right? I think Giannis's willingness to, get fouled and go to the line and stay aggressive, even when he's not shooting well from the foul line. I feel like it gets talked about so much as a contrast to Ben Simmons. So I feel like I've heard discussion of this a lot in the past couple of weeks, given Simmons and some of his struggles. But we saw it again in that type of scenario. Normally, it's in the context of his aggressiveness, driving to the basket, not shying away from contact. In this instance, it's, like literally like I could pass the ball to a teammate when the other team has foul, but he was just like, you know what, no, F it, I'm taking these. Again, up 4, well, obviously less pressure, but, credit to Giannis, he makes both free throws. And then, as we mentioned before, Jrue, looking like the all-defensive player that he is, just at half court, just ripping it out of Trey's hands and throwing it over his head to Giannis for the exclamation point finish for Giannis's 34th point and 30th point in the second half. So, yeah, as you said, I mean, obviously the Philly opener was exciting. This one, fairly close. I'd say the Philly game was more exciting just because it did come down to a final possession, but certainly from just a, entertainment perspective, we saw some Trae Young fireworks, especially in that first quarter. And then he was really quiet sort of in the middle 2 quarters until he got going a bit in the third. And then obviously fourth quarter, he hit some shots. Dejounte Murray hit some shots. We saw Trae hit some of those kind of, hash mark, almost logo type threes. But I think, from the Bucks perspective, tactically, they seem to make the decision like, we don't want to throw a ton of bodies. Like we saw, I forget who it was. We saw one, we saw a couple times where they like sort of tried to double team him and get the ball out of his hands. But for the most part, they're kind of like, all right, we're going to let Trae be a scorer or try to be a scorer. And we're not going to let him kind of turn into, 30 point, 15 assist Trae Young. We're going to make him be 42 point, 5 assists or 6 assists, whatever he had, Trae Young. And obviously it's a pick your poison type thing. But, for me, like if Trae's hitting like, 32-foot threes against anybody, so I feel like people, especially if it's like switched against the big, people like are like, oh, well, what do you do? You just can't switch against Trae. It's like, tip your cap, man. Like I think as a defense, you can only do so much if you're allowing threes from that far out. You kind of live with it. And obviously Atlanta has offensive talent. And, at the end of the game, right, we saw Trae, I think he missed his last 3 shots or so, had the turnover. And when I looked at the shot distribution again on cleaning the glass, I think they were in the 9th percentile in terms of rim shots tonight. So they have pretty much nothing at the rim tonight, but they were like, 97th percentile from mid-range in terms of number of attempts, because they were just, DeJounte was shooting a lot of pull-ups. Trae had his kind of shooting tons of floaters, and was mostly, pretty good at them. But, very, relatively few threes, again, under 30 attempted threes. They hit a good percentage of those. So that kind of compensated a little bit. But similar to the game on Friday with the Bucks, that game they shot really poorly. This game they shot much better, but a couple of things that kept them in the game. They didn't turn the ball over basically at all on Friday. They had a turnover percentage benefit again tonight, and then offensive rebounding. They had notably better offensive rebound rates both on Friday and Saturday, which, I think that's again, to be honest, we saw that in the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years ago, right? Like, how did the Bucks kind of counteract some of what Atlanta was doing? Just going big. Just let's lean into being big. Let's crash the offensive glass. Let's create second chance opportunities. That was a huge thing throughout the playoff run, including the finals run as well. And, we've seen again in this first couple of weeks here, we've seen Bobby, Giannis, and Brooke, not just on the floor in first halves, but we saw that group in the fourth quarter tonight as well, as the Bucks really leaned into their size and the advantages that can create them. And, again, look at a couple Giannis's buckets late came off of offensive rebounds. We mentioned the save off the free throw missed by Wes. Just outworking teams, outbigging teams down low is obviously just one of the things that the Bucks have to their advantage. And we always think of it in terms of what it does for them defensively with Giannis and Brooke in particular, protecting the rim. But again, it's also a weapon that they can use that size down low to get extra chances. And, especially on nights like Friday when you're not shooting the ball very well, obviously that's sometimes just what you need to create offense.
Make sure you check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast if you want to catch up with everything, not necessarily NBA related. That'll be there, but you can also get your NFL stuff. World Series is going on as well. So check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast after you're done with Locked On Bucks. So just a couple of other random notes I've got in my head from this back-to-back across the weekend. Marjon Beauchamp got random second quarter minutes, knocked down a corner three. So he had the late bucket in garbage time, his first score in the NBA today. His first, I don't want to say meaningful bucket, in meaningful minutes, we'll call it that. His first bucket in meaningful minutes in the game, knocked down the corner three. So that was nice to see from him. Jordan Nwora did score in double digits, but geez, he was rough against the Knicks. And, he had some really tough moments tonight as well. One where he was trying to push for the 2-for-1 and he just let the ball go out of bounds. There was another couple of times where it looked like last year's defense a little bit, where he was helping and he was right in the paint and sort of left an open shooter in the corner. So a couple of little things for Jordan Nwora. Bud was I had the press conference on here just before we jumped on, and Bud was pretty complimentary of his scoring tonight, thought that it was helpful, and it was, to get double digits out of him on a night where you need the offense. But yeah, he does, to me, and I understand it, and I understand why it might be the case, but he does look to me like he's pressing a little bit. He's probably feeling the pressure of trying to secure this spot in the rotation, or maybe even just for the next week, beat out Marjon Beauchamp for these minutes so far. So I don't want to be too critical, because he does just look like someone to me that maybe is just pressing a little bit, which does make some sense.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, part of his role is that he's supposed to press offensively, right? He's supposed to be aggressive offensively. You don't have him out there just to be a wallflower on offense. But let me say this: Friday, we can talk about a very interesting weekend as far as the Bucks jerseys go. On Friday, we see the return of purple. I think certainly from watching the telecast and also just hearing from a bunch of people who were in the building, it seemed like they did a great job with the game ops, bringing back some of the 90s favorites, light it up videos we saw. And I thought, as I've said before, I am not nostalgic for the purples. I grew up with that jersey. I kind of associate it with really mediocre basketball. So I feel like that's kind of hanging over my head. When I tweeted about it, I feel like a few other people that were in their 40s made similar comments. And I was like, okay, this would just be like a generational thing, versus people that are in their 20s, I think probably have a lot more fond memories of it. But anyway, Giannis, as you said, Giannis makes every jersey look cool. And I thought just the general kind of vibe around the game was a lot of fun. But I got to say, Jordan Nwora wearing the purple number 13, look, people wearing Big Dog's number has not bothered me at all. Luke Ridnour, Malcolm Brogdon, hey, whatever, right? The jersey's not retired. That's a whole other debate. But if it's available, it's a cool number. Go ahead, wear it. No problem with Jordan Nwora wearing number 13. But man, if you're going to wear the purple Bucks jersey number 13, and you're going to go 0 for 6 and missing some bunnies and just looking terrible offensively, I mean, you're sullying the legacy of Big Dog with this. Now, bad defense, okay, fine, Jordan. Maybe you're paying tribute with bad defense on Friday night to Glenn Robinson, because Lord knows that was not his calling card. But I gotta say, I was feeling a little bit, like an old man wanting the youngsters to get off my lawn with seeing Jordan Nwora wearing that purple number 13 and not doing it justice. But pretty cool jerseys Friday night. And then I personally am a huge fan of these new black jerseys, which, borrow largely it's basically the same design as a jersey we've seen previously, but the kind of black gold with a little bit of blue. I think they look really cool. So yeah, good jersey weekend in my book for the Bucks overall. I hope people enjoyed it. And Jordan, next time you're wearing purple number 13, go get some buckets, man. You gotta give me a Big Dog yank, like. Respect Glenn Robinson.
Okay, well, if we're going to go down this path, then what about Ray Allen? You got Giannis out here shooting 1 for 6 from 3 in the purple 34. Bit of respect for Ray. It could have at least gone perfect from 3, Giannis, if you ask me. But no, I love the purple. Shout out to Dustin Godsey because we've had him on this podcast for years. He's been getting harassed on Twitter about the purple jerseys and why don't you get a purple jersey? And in a perfect example of you just can't keep people happy. I saw a tweet after the game and someone was like, at Bucks, next time you're going to wear purple jerseys, you may as well have an alternate court as well. And I was like, you just can't keep the people happy. There's always going to be something. Next, they're going to want you to, hey, you got the alternate court, but if you're going to wear the purple, we need you to resurrect the Bradley Center from the dust so we can play in the Bradley Center. All right.
Where's Street Life? Where's Street Life? No Street Life? What a joke. What a joke. No.
What about Ja Rule? I thought Ja Rule was going to come back for halftime. That was a memorable.
I don't think so. Get Warren Wiegrats and Street Life. I'm feeling better about that. But yeah, it was. I think it was generally a really well done weekend, and you got to pull out stops when you have a home back to back. At least it's Friday, Saturday, right? It's not like you're a Tuesday, Wednesday back to back here at home. Yeah, it was. Obviously the game ops jerseys. Bucks did all they could to kind of give each game a different feel. They didn't, I was kind of curious if they were just going to run it back tonight and just do the purple thing again and just say, all right, whoever didn't come last night, we're just going to do an encore, which I'm sure would have been fine. People would have really enjoyed it. But I thought the blacks were some pretty cool jerseys to wear tonight. And I'm looking forward to the different jerseys this year. We're not obviously huge jersey people, but at the end of the day, when Giannis is dealing, Jrue Holiday is getting buckets, they make these jerseys look pretty cool. And I don't think I'm going to be buying one myself, but I may need to get like one of those black in like a jersey. I feel like that's like an appropriate dad move. By the way, Kane, I have another pre-kindergarten birthday party I have to attend with my daughter tomorrow. It will be my 5th birthday party in the last 2 weekends. So I'm just putting in just huge little kid birthday mileage of late. I bring this Bucks cup usually. So I kind of put out I live in Austin, Texas. So I try to put out the vibe a little bit, about who I'm rooting for. Sometimes I'll wear some Bucks gear, but I don't know. Maybe I need to add another like Bucks hoodie or something like that into my repertoire.
Plenty of time for that. I've got one last thought before we wrap this up. So Nathan Marzione, who perhaps a lot of people know from Twitter, posted some clips and quite honestly just straight up posts some comedy sometimes, and I'm very easily amused. So I get a good chuckle out of it. But he tweeted something last night because as we were watching this Knicks game, and I'm more partial, I prefer if Giannis is dropping 50s rather than getting the triple doubles. Like I want the points. I'm hungry for the points. But the Bucks' historical struggles with getting Giannis his 10th assist is unbelievable. And at the end of this Knicks game was just brutal to watch. It was brick after brick after brick. And I always bring this up. Giannis says, I didn't know about the stats. I didn't know about the stats. And people believe that. I have people tweet me all the time. No, Giannis says he doesn't care about this or that. I'm like, just watch the game. This man was hunting for that 10th assist and nobody could hit a shot. And Nathan Marzione says this is the 21st time he's been stranded on 9 assists since 2018. So I don't actually really care about the triple doubles, but 21
which is
times.
The most. I think that's the most. Nathan said that was the most in the NBA. So it's not just. Because I have no idea, right? Like, has Jokic done it like 40 times? I don't know, but apparently not. Apparently that's the most in the NBA. So Giannis, the king of the almost triple double.
Mate, it's unbelievable, and it is painful to watch because you can tell he just wants that 10th assist. Sometimes Bud just leaves him out there a little bit longer to pick up that 10th assist, and then Bud says, "Listen, man, these guys can't make a shot. I got to get you off the court. So come on, guys, come on, just make that."
I think that we should also say in general, like Giannis. Look, I don't think Giannis is obsessed with his stats the way maybe some superstars are,
I agree with that.
Does Giannis enjoy being the man who scores shit tons of points and puts up monster numbers, oh hell yeah, he enjoys that. Like he'll have, you know, when he's in search of a triple double, he you know, as you said, like we've talked about this for years, like the assist hunting they do, it's pretty egregious, right? And the teammates know, right? I also think the teammates know that just, you know, in the first and second quarter too, like if Giannis kicks you the ball in rhythm, put up that shot, right? Like Giannis doesn't want people dilly-dallying or whatever. But I think Giannis I mean, you know, I think his kind of origins as a basketball player, I think there was I think he came in a league like really being proud of his passing. I think that's like the one thing that he will say, you've heard him say repeatedly over the last couple of years, is just like, hey, people underrate my passing. You know, I think he said, I think in an Eric name story, our friend, he quoted him as saying like, you know, motherfuckers didn't know I could pass or something like that, right? Like he takes pride in like saying, don't underestimate my passing. He doesn't necessarily say stuff like that about his offensive game in terms of scoring, but like, you know, I don't think Giannis is refreshing to see his, you know, points per game average like I do every night to see, you know, where is he relative to 30 points a game. But would Giannis want to be above 30 points a game? I think Giannis would enjoy being above 30 points a game. You know, opening night, I think was a little bit of an aberration in terms of his facilitation and passing. And I think over the past week, we've seen kind of more of like Giannis being like, yo, especially with Chris out, right? Like maybe we see a little less of it when Chris is back just because they have better balance. But, you know, don't worry about Giannis not shooting enough. Like Giannis knows that this team needs him to be aggressive and look for his shot. And I mean, it's wild, right? Like think about the dunk he threw down on Mitchell Robinson last night, or the dunk he threw down
tonight.
The lefty spike on John Collins tonight. I mean, we've seen him detonate on guys with that left hand, whether it was Rudy Gobert, Gogo Batadze, you know, like big dudes he has yammed on with that left hand. And the fact that just another awesome dunk from Giannis, right? It's pretty damn cool that we don't really have to make a big deal out of these things, and they're just kind of the everyday. I mean, probably the ultimate sign that his first quarter, the first half he was off, was the fact that he had another. Oh. Yeah, I mean, it was going to be another highlight reel dunk, and you back ironed it and missed it. And we did that. I was like, oh man, is this going to be one of those nights? But he'll have one of those halves, as we've seen now a couple times in the first couple weeks here. He will have those halves, but his ability to just bounce back and fight through stuff and just start making shots and willing himself and his team to success. That's why he is just a once in a lifetime type talent. And, you know, we'll say it again, just enjoy every game, enjoy every moment that we have watching this guy play, because he's something else. And certainly these first couple of weeks, I mean, honestly, like we know that the playoffs are what really matters to this team and what matters to his legacy and all that stuff. But 5-0, keep banking wins, right? Like we obviously didn't come into the season expecting them to go off and take the first seed in the East or something like that. But to the extent that you can just keep banking wins and put up great numbers, lead the league in defensive rating, all that stuff, it matters for playoff seeding, yes, which is important, but also matters in like MVP voting and, you know, where he ranks in terms of defensive player of the year, all those things. And selfishly as a fan, yeah, these are the kinds of things that we should care about. For, you know, if the regular season's not really what the game is all about, like let's at least have these sort of fun things that we can look at and, you know, just keep winning games. Good things happen for guys individually, good things happen for the team. And, you know, yeah, just a couple of really, really solid wins here on a back-to-back. Take care of business against the Knicks, who have been pretty solid looking here early in the season. Shout out to Javon Carter and George Hill, both playing well at the same time last night and shooting the ball well, scoring well. I thought they both did a really nice job against Jalen Brunson, who, again, just they kind of harassed, and Brook Lopez was, again, just sort of everywhere defensively. And then tonight, obviously, you know, the box score much more impressive for Trae Young than Jalen Brunson last night. But, you know, basically the Bucks turned the Hawks into kind of a one-dimensional team. And, you know, again, you kind of play the math game. And ultimately, Atlanta, as well as they scored at the end of the day, Bucks taking care of business, and great to see Jrue Holiday keeping up his end of the bargain and kind of hopefully breaking out. Hopefully that'll be something that we're going to see more regularly. Maybe not 34 points, but let's be done with the like 2 for 15, 6 for 19 type games. Drew, like just if you can be like 9 for 18 most nights, like we'll be pretty happy with that, especially with Chris Middleton out.
No doubt. So don't take Giannis for granted. Also, don't take Locked On Bucks for granted. So subscribe on YouTube.
Can I? One more comment before I know you've got to.
This won't be quick. I told Frank to leave the house and never listen to him.
You mentioned Marjan Beauchamp.
Yeah,
those minutes felt like the shot across the bow for Jordan Nwora. Like, hey Jordan, I'm just gonna see if this guy can not embarrass himself, so that I can maybe throw him out there this week. Because kind of getting a little sick of Jordan's inconsistency and just sort of defensive lapses and stuff like that. So anyway, we'll see. More to come.
I agree. A couple games against Detroit coming up this week. So as I said, subscribe on YouTube and the audio platform. Jump on YouTube. Jump in the comments. There's always plenty of vibrant conversation going on over there. So we really appreciate it. And it helps us out. This is a nice little weekend pod. When you go 2-0 on the weekend, you feel like you can jump on and talk a bit of Bucks. So we're excited. Hopefully everyone else is.
If they had lost, it would have sucked because we would have been like, we should have podcasted last night when we had nice vibes after a win. But thankfully, the Bucks made sure that we had the good vibes, the 2-0 vibes.
We know that our podcast listeners and watchers have a life. And when it's a back-to-back,
we don't.
Back-to-back on the weekend.
Hopefully they do, yeah.
Oh,
Hopefully you guys have more of a life than, Bucks games and children's birthday parties, which is all my life's about right now.
Yeah, it wouldn't be hard. Speaking of that, I'm going to a basketball game right now. So we'll speak to you guys next time.